It's great to be here with everyone, and let me just start by sharing with you that there are two distinct dimensions to the discussion with Dan tonight. The first is about entrepreneurship, and the second, as you heard Scott mention, is absolutely about Detroit and the role that Dan is playing in rebuilding and really seeing a very bright future for Detroit. You may or may not know this, but our very own Brad Keywell is actually from Detroit. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about entrepreneurship with Dan, and then Brad and I are going to switch seats, and he's going to come up and talk about Detroit.
And most importantly, the Tigers are up 6-1 in the fifth inning. Which is
good.
That
right?
Yeah, so.
Excellent. So any score updates only if they're good?
Yep.
Okay, only
exactly.
if they're good for Detroit, of course. All right, just to put this discussion in context, let me just share a little bit of additional background on some of Dan's accomplishments. First of all, he is, in fact, the founder and chairman of Quicken Loans, the nation's largest online home lender. As the founder of Detroit Venture Partners, he's the most active venture investor in Michigan. He's the second largest private landowner in Detroit with 40 properties downtown and over 8 million square feet. He's a majority owner of the Cleveland Cavs, and in fact, the Cavs went to the NBA Finals in their third year under his ownership.
That's a long time ago. Yeah.
Hope springs eternal, Dan.
So you know.
And in addition to that, Dan is the owner of casinos in Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Detroit, and actually led the statewide referendum in Ohio to approve casino gambling. Finally, Dan is the founder of Bizdom, a nonprofit academy to mentor budding entrepreneurs. So Dan, you are obviously incredibly accomplished, and you are many, many things. At the heart of all of that, you are a very prolific entrepreneur. And it would certainly seem that you have always been an entrepreneur, beginning with when you were 12 years old and you started a business delivering pizzas in your neighborhood. Where do you get that entrepreneurial spirit from? Where's that drive come from?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly. And, my father had a small business in the city of Detroit. He owned a bar, actually. He was in the military, and then he owned a bar. And then my grandfather had a small business, too. So, as a little kid, I used to go to their businesses and play with the adding machine. And I don't know if you guys know what an adding machine is. It's that little thing. It's got tape, and you don't even want to know.
It's an EY-sponsored event, so I think we've got a lot of people in the audience who know what an adding machine is.
Okay. So, you get a flavor of small business and the action of a business. I mean, for me, it was just about the action, activity, and the building part. I just like to build things, and I think that most entrepreneurs, at their core, I think just they like to build. I don't know very many entrepreneurs, or frankly even wildly successful people or very successful people or people who've had success in any field that do it because, if I do this, I'm going to make a lot of money, and they're chasing money. Generally, money follows them, generally doesn't lead, and you see them do well in that category, but they're motivated by I think, building things.
So how do you sustain that? I mean, how do you sustain that drive?
Keep building bigger things, I guess. I think that, anybody who has that bug, who really just, again, loves to create, loves to build, I think that that stays with you, and I don't think it goes away. Most people, and you heard a couple speakers earlier here today, they've done different things, but at their core, I think, it's a building thing, it's a creating thing, it's impacting people positively, the community, or wherever they may be in the process.
Right. So you lived every entrepreneur's dream when you sold Quicken Loans, and just 2 years later, you bought it back. Can you talk a little bit about what happened between the time that you sold the company and the time that you bought it back?
Sure. That's way back at the turn of the century. Now we're talking, so it's a while ago. But we were a public company. We had been public for about 14, 15 months, and so we were only public a total of 17 months. We went public in 1998 in May and sold to Intuit at the time, January 2000, and then bought it back in 2002. But what was strange was we were way more profitable in 2002 by a long shot, and bought it back for way cheaper than we sold it for in 2000.
Fraction.
Just kind of a strange thing. But I stayed at the company at the time. We were a much smaller business at the time, and I wanted to make sure that our people had a sustainable business going forward if I was going to leave. But I sort of had a feeling that these guys were going to get out of the consumer direct kind of stuff. They had changed CEOs, so I stuck around, and one day the guy who was the CEO at the time just walked in my office. He said, we want to sell you the business back, and we don't want to go through a whole process, and you can have the name. We did a pooling. You probably know this more than anybody. There's pooling of interest accounting, which they didn't have to take a write-off if they sold it cheaper than they bought it for you from. And he said, you want to buy it back? And I said, okay, and that was the end of it. So, yeah,
well, and it's
a
phenomenal story to see what's happened since you have bought it back, and what a terrific success. What is some of the things that you did to really create that winning culture that enabled that great success story?
Yeah, so, and you heard that word culture used earlier today several times, and when I first heard that word culture, I kid you not, I would look up at people like they were on some kind of drug. I had no idea what they were talking about. I said, people go, what's your culture? And I go, I have to close the loan. I know what you're talking about. And I resisted that. But you learn over time, not only is culture important to us, it's everything, literally everything. I mean, a culture defines who you are. So in our view, what you do is sort of secondary to who you are. We're involved in 78 or 80 businesses or something now to some degree with our venture fund and private equity and all that. But who we are is the same. So whether it's basketball, home loans, 3D graphical cool wall stickers, fatheads, whatever it might be. They're different products, different services, but who we are doesn't change. And we define it in a certain kind of funky way, if you will. But it seems to catch on with our people who like. If your people like who you are, then what you do, they'll do anything. Yeah. I mean, if they really buy into who you are.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've heard, Dan, is that you have a pretty comprehensive orientation for folks who are joining the company that could literally last 7 hours long. Yeah. And you really promote some of the isms that really kind of speak to that culture and your values. Can you talk a little bit about your favorite isms? What are the ones you hold most dear?
I brought the book here with us, but we have these 19 little, I guess, cutesy sayings that combine define who we are and combine define our culture. And what we do, I still to this day, every 5-6 weeks, there's probably 300-400 new people in all the businesses combined together that have started during that period of time, and I take them through it for 8 hours. 8 hours. And
8 hours.
And a lot of people, what's strange to me is sometimes people will write an email or a letter after said, I really can't believe that you would spend that much time with us new people. And I'm thinking, God, is there anything more important for a leader or an entrepreneur of a company to take people through who they are for a period of time and really bathe them in the culture? What's ironic is for an entire 8-hour period, we don't mention the word mortgage once. We don't mention the word, well, maybe basketball a little bit, but we don't mention, anything that we do. We just talk about, again, who we are. And it's reflected in, always raising our level of awareness. A penny saved is a penny, meaning that's all it is. It'll never add up to anything. It's just a penny. That's true. Money follows, it doesn't lead, and so there's 19 of them, and we go deep on every one, and we show slides and videos. We take breaks because breaks are good, and we do a lot, stuff like that. So
that's great. And how do you? I mean, clearly the orientation and your leadership and really setting that tone is critical to maintaining the culture, but how do you have the rest of your organization, your leadership team, and really the cascading of that effectuated across the organization so you can sustain it?
So that's always a challenge. If you're growing your business, the larger you are, the bigger you get, it becomes more and more difficult to maintain who you are and your culture. So you really have to, and that's why we present it from day one. So it's a person's first week or second, third week on the job, and they're going to sit in this thing for 8-9 hours, and we're going to, we're not just going to talk the talk, we're going to walk the walk. But over time, if you keep sort of banging the fist on the table about it, and they're good, you can't fool people, right? You can't have bad stuff. I mean, if you have good, authentic definition of who you are, which to me is your culture and philosophy, it catches on like wildfire. It really does. And really all culture does, or in defining who you are, drives every decision that people make in the company. Because if you really think about a business, it's about thousands of decisions that are made daily, weekly, and throughout the life of a company by all of your people. So the more positive decisions they make, or better decisions, and in line with who you are, the quicker you can grow and get to become what you want to become. And without that, it becomes difficult. So if people don't know who you are, the decision making becomes very tenuous. I don't know exactly how I should make this decision, but if they really do know who you are, they'll make that decision in line with who you are.
All right, that's wonderful. Well, my precious time is up here, Dan.
That's
but
it?
I really, that's it. I really enjoyed this aspect
you.
of the discussion. I'm really looking forward to hearing about a great turnaround story in the making, which is Opportunity Detroit.
Can I ask you just a question?
Absolutely.
Is that okay? Like, what happened to the and between E and Y? What was the deal? Like, I just noticed that and then the woman backstage said, no, I thought she was kidding. She goes, no, they really got rid of it. And I said, like, so was it like a discussion around the room? Hey, let's get rid of the and.
Oh my goodness.
Like, what
Was
happened?
it a discussion around the table? Can I tell you?
What happened?
It was a discussion around the globe. Well, to be completely honest with you, we've actually rebranded the firm globally as EY, because we are an incredibly global firm with 175,000 people around the world, and there are actually parts of Asia where Ernst and Young are not words that translate. They literally do not translate into local languages. And so to have the commonality of our brand and the recognition of our brand around the world, we have gone to EY, and simply EY, which a lot of our constituents and clients had already abbreviated.
So it wasn't an anti-and movement.
We have no problem with the ampersand. No, we're completely okay with
I just want to make sure. Okay. Great. Thank you. So, okay.
And as we transition to the Opportunity Detroit discussion, I think we've got a short video that we'd like to show.
Oh, great.
Opportunity. It doesn't stare you in the face. It's not going to yell at you to come and get it. It doesn't knock. So what does opportunity look like? Not what you might think. You see, opportunity is not a right. It's definitely not equal. And it doesn't come with an instruction manual. That's because opportunity isn't found. It's molded, it's built, it's created. It's as much about grit as it is intellect. An explosive high-tech corridor located at the intersection of muscle and brains? You bet. Because opportunity only comes to those already in the game. What does opportunity look like? It looks like Detroit. Opportunity made in Detroit.
Okay, it is really cool to be here with you talking about Detroit.
Yeah. A little bit of a buzzkill for me, I have to tell you. I mean,
what?
It was a little bit of a buzzkill. The switch. I mean, she was such a nice.
I am pro and signs.
No, I know.
This is cool because I'm a Detroiter at heart, and so first of all, to have you here in Chicago is an honor and a privilege. But to talk to you about what you're doing in Detroit is special. Let's start with what we just looked at, which is part of your signature about what Detroit, what the energy is and where it's going. Tell us about that video.
Sure. We started moving people downtown 3 years ago in 2 months. So I guess that's 38 months ago, and now we're up to 11,500 people in downtown Detroit working in various businesses and companies. Quicken Loans being the flagship of all that. But we decided a year ago, it was a year ago right now actually, that we needed one brand. There was a bunch of brands and a bunch of, we love Detroit, we this Detroit, we that Detroit, and all the bad things about Detroit that you hear, but we're part of people who would kid around about that too. So somebody in the office just mentioned, really this is where the opportunity is, Opportunity Detroit. People liked it. The World Series was coming up in Detroit last year, and so that was Kid Rock's voice. He's a big Detroit guy. And really within 5 days from conception to writing to editing to shooting it all and getting Kid Rock, who was in California, to read it, we're able to put that together all with downtown Detroit talent. And unfortunately, we got it on the World Series, but it only lasted 2 home games last year. Hopefully it'll be different this year.
Absolutely. Why you? Why do you feel the need to do what you're doing, given that you don't have to do what you're doing?
Yeah.
And I mean down deep. Why do you feel you've got this need to really be one of, if not the leader, of the revitalization of an iconic city?
Well, just like you said, you're a Detroiter at heart. I mean, I'm from Detroit. I was born there. My father was born there. My grandfather was born there. You go through generations of this, hearing this stuff, which we're still hearing as we get through the bankruptcy and all that. And we had an opportunity to positively impact the outcome. We really did. We were at a certain point 4 or 5 years ago in the suburbs. We could have either built a new campus or something on some farmland, kept being spread out in the suburbs, or we're just going to, you know what, let's go downtown and see if we can make a run of it. The other thing, though, is that a lot of people don't realize there's a major business reason for it, and that you're an example. I actually use you, as you know, and I've told you this. I use your picture and your partner's picture, Eric, in slideshows, and I say, do you know who these guys are? And everybody goes, well, they look a little familiar. I go, you ever hear that company called Groupon? And they go, yeah, we've heard of Groupon. I go, well, very successful company among other companies these guys started, and they did this, this, and this. And I said, you know where they're from? And people go, well, no, Chicago. I go, no, actually they're from Detroit, but they left. And, you left, okay?
I'm sorry.
No, let me tell you something. I would have left too at that time. I would have left, I'm just saying, because they wanted to be in an urban core, in an urban environment where the action is, where the connectivity is, where excitement is. I mean, people don't, nothing against, I'm going to use a suburbs name here, so don't be upset or anything, but it's not like people wake up who want to leave cities like Detroit or Cleveland or Indianapolis or wherever they are that's not looked upon as the glorious city and say, I can't wait to get to Schaumburg, man. It's, okay? So, because the version of Schaumburg is in Detroit suburbs, just as nice, they're all very, very nice. So our talent leaving Michigan State, University of Michigan, Wayne State, and all the rest of them, were leaving to go to urban cores. And for us to compete, Quicken Loans is actually a technology company. It happens to do home loans. We're really not a mortgage lender. We're a technology business. We were losing people for the first time ever out of these universities. We like your company. I want to go to Chicago, New York. And so for us, it was this, we're from Detroit. We love the city. We want to make a difference. But to be the kind of business we want to be, we're going to have to be in an urban core. We're not going to go to Flint or Saginaw. Detroit's, our home. Let's make it happen there.
I want to talk about two things, and the second is about building a tech company really anywhere between New York and California, which Eric and I, with you all, are holding the flag saying it can be done. But the first thing is, is there a model for you to follow for what you're doing in the city? Is there another city that you think that helps you figure out where to go? Or is this like the other businesses that you started in that you've got to create the playbook?
I think it's probably more of the latter, because I don't think two cities are that close to being like each other anywhere. And, Cleveland and Detroit, actually, those are the two that were really heavily involved, probably are the closest two almost that I know of. But even Silicon Valley is really sort of in a suburbs. It's not really in a urban core. I mean, there's obviously some good businesses in San Francisco and all that, but, New York's got a little piece of the technology thing and growing and doing well. In Detroit, these buildings, I don't know if they're showing those, showing some pictures. You can see there's these beautiful architectural masterpiece buildings available for us, and we were just able to go in and take advantage of that environment and put it all together in a few blocks. And you're
doing it from scratch. In my point, you're just figuring out as you go.
Yep.
So when we all, and many people in the audience tonight, like you and me and Eric, are building technology companies here. And we all hear comments about it's better somewhere else. Mm-hmm. In our case, there's a community of technology businesses that are forming. So there is an ecosystem that's growing. In your case, you're partially or more than partially creating that ecosystem. Talk about how hard it is to build a tech company between the coasts, or maybe how easy it might become.
Yeah, it's hard for me to know exactly, not building one in California or New York or even Chicago here, but I can tell you this is this generation, and when I say this generation, people in their 20s and 30s, not only do they seem to want to be in urban cores, but more so, I think, than, I don't know if we're in the same generation, probably, within the decade, but
close.
There's I'm not going to do it. Okay. No, I lost my train of thought. Not only do they want to move into urban cores, but they even use these terms. They want to impact the outcome. And we tell people, we're having people now from, Harvard, people who are calling us, I'm from Harvard, I'm from Yale. I want to make a difference. I want to impact American City. I want to be part of this. Not only are there jobs now here, but it sells to them to actually say you can actually see your work, what you're doing impact a great American city and bring it back. And that's like a big selling point. And we are able to get some very high-end talent, and it's growing daily.
So what you're doing is it's in the midst of economic trouble, yet you're building and you continue to do your thing. Here in Chicago, the population is growing a little bit. The home prices are edging back up, and there's a lot of good. But our state has one of the worst, and I think city as well, one of the worst underfunded pension problems in the country. So seeing what you're seeing in Detroit from a front row seat, what advice would you give to the mayor of Chicago or other mayors that might be in these situations to avoid what you're seeing?
Well, I think what happened to Detroit, and you can read about it, and there's books written about it and documentaries and everything else, 60-minute things, crazy stuff like that. But there is pretty much a consensus. This wasn't one, even the mayor, the former mayor that just went to jail for 28 years the last week or something. But no one would say it's his fault or it's the guy before him's fault. This was a sort of an endemic, systematic, decades-long failure of bad decision after bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, probably because the culture was a bad one. I mean, just like we were talking about earlier, whether it's a city or whether it's a company, I mean, it's impossible to have. Somebody actually told me a long time ago, it was one of the best piece of advice I ever got. He said, there's no such thing as a good deal with a bad guy, period. So I took that to heart. And same thing, if you have a bad culture, in my view, there's no such thing as a good company, good city, good school, good anything. So we could spend a long time talking about it, but it was a long, decades-long failure that is finally at its end. I mean, it's at its end. In fact, the bottom, there's a lot of news around the bankruptcy. The bankruptcy is really more of a wrapping up all the bad stuff. We've probably already hit bottom and are now coming the right way again.
Ram, our mayor, said to me recently, as Chicago goes, so goes the suburbs. So that's why all of us in the broader Chicagoland community should care about the city and feel a vested part of it. You think it's fair to say, as Detroit goes, so goes the Midwest? In other words, we all are vested in what's happening?
I think that's fair. At least it's fair to say the state of Michigan. As Detroit goes, the state goes. You know, people in the suburbs of Detroit used to think for years and even decades that they were immune from what happened in Detroit, and that probably was true for a period of time. It's no longer true. I mean, there are corners. It's actually, the economy's improved overall in Detroit and the suburbs recently as well, but I mean, there were corners that were the hottest corners in the world of real estate in the suburbs that if you would have told me 8, 9, 10 years ago would have empty stores, like I would have said something's wrong with you, that are literally, you know, half of them empty. That, right. And these are like, you just can't believe what you're seeing. So, you know,
cities matter.
It matters. I mean, you can't, and you lose. Here, look, we're in the brain economy, right? We're not in the muscle economy anymore. So, my point earlier, if we're going to lose our best and brightest out of great universities, which Michigan has, to places like Chicago or New York or Boston or wherever they may go, I mean, not only are we paying for it with Michigan's taxpayer dollars, but these are the wealth creators of the future. I mean, the guys, you know, when I give speeches and stuff, I talk about you guys, and I mean it. And we don't, you know, you look 15 years ago, you left, and I think when I asked you guys the question once before, you told me, or either Eric told me that, well, had it been different, you know, we may have never left. Well, I always tell people we can't lose the next group on. How are you going to measure that on your spreadsheet? You know, you can't measure what you don't have, but we can't miss the next one. So we got to create that ecosystem that keeps people in town.
Speaking of that, what if you had to say the 3 businesses or industries that are going to be the core of the reemergence of Detroit? What are they?
Well, first of all, the car business, automobile business, car business is not going away at all. In fact, post their bankruptcies, 2 of the 3 businesses, I mean, they're on an upswing and doing as well almost as they've ever done in a certain degree. And I think those businesses are becoming more and more tech-oriented as well. You see that even talking to the leaders of the automobile companies and all that. And so I think they'll always be a big part of what's going on. Now, are you going to have plants within the city borders like you had for years and decades? That's probably not in the cards, but you certainly are going to have growing. I mean, Renaissance Center, where GM's world headquarters is full. You know, many of the buildings we have are full. I mean, downtown is getting full. So automobile business, an entrepreneurial technology scene. Obviously, there's banking, tourism's big in Michigan as a whole. Those are the ones.
Let's talk about casinos, which is one of the pillars of your empire. What role do casinos play in our cities?
Well, we never had designs to be in the casino business. The way we got in the casino business was we were in Cleveland with the Cavaliers. Ohio was surrounded by states that had gaming approved, and Ohio did not. And all their people were leaving to go gamble in all these states, and we thought we could run a referendum, and in 2009 we did. And so another company ended up with Columbus and Toledo. We ended up with Cincinnati and downtown Cleveland, but we sold it to the citizens of Ohio as urban casinos. We had no interest in owning a casino in a farmland or in a suburb, really. It didn't go with who we were, really. We were building urban cores, Cleveland and Detroit. So we sold it that way, and we built them that way. And we look at our casino business as certainly it's a profit-making business, but also one that brings activity and entertainment and jobs to the inner core and pushes people both directions. So, not like a typical casino where you're doing the bear hug and it becomes a vault or a bat cave or whatever. No clocks, no windows, I think we're the only casino maybe in the world in Cleveland that has windows. It's crazy. It's nuts. A casino with windows. It's almost like one guy came up to me and said, I'm not in reality. I think I'm dreaming. Is this real? Because he could look out the window. So, we're trying to build it into the fabric of the entertainment district.
I want to talk about what drives you, and I'm going to imagine that you don't know the answer, but I want to try to find an answer. When you wake up in the morning, you don't have to do anything that you're doing, but you work as hard as anybody I know, and you're as enterprising in the real sense of the word as anybody I know. Do you know, you keep creating?
Yeah, I love going to work every day. I love going to work as much as I've ever loved it. There's so much to do. There's so many threads to pull on. There's so much, the word connect. I don't know if it's connectivity or connectivity, so that E and Y thing. I'm just confused by the word. but I don't know. So I'll say connectivity. There's this connectivity of people and impacting people and seeing people succeed and funding young entrepreneurs. And
is it hard to balance family? You have so many balls in the air at business, and you've got, I know, a great family, and you're so close.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, it's not too hard. We only had 5 kids, so it's not easy. It's never easy. But you're never gonna finish, right? That's why I would tell people. Once that pail of water is full, the water goes over it. Most people who are building things, that moment in time comes very early in their careers. So everybody only gets 24 hours. So you have to put down the paintbrush at a certain time. It'll all be there the next day. It's not like you're gonna finish that day and go, wow, I finished everything, I'm done. Now I can go home. So since you're never gonna have that feeling anyway, you might as well leave at 6:30 and go check the game out or do what you're gonna do, because you should balance it.
Right. Given how, I'll point out that your company has been named one of the top 10 best places to work by Fortune for a bunch of years. Your customer satisfaction ratings by J.D. Power are #1. And you really teach people that come into your world about business, but also about life, and about being a responsible, enterprising entrepreneur at the workplace. How do you think a university education plays into that? Does it not? We see entrepreneurs who don't graduate college. What do you think about that whole thing?
Yeah, I don't think there's a set one-way path to success. I think there's many paths that people can take to success. I think you heard that earlier too. Different backgrounds, different ways people got to success. So I think people certainly who go to universities and good schools, colleges, can learn a lot there, and that can help them. And I've seen, as we've all seen, entrepreneurs who don't need any of it and come right from high school and become great entrepreneurs over time. So I believe it can happen a lot of different ways.
You are passionate. You're a passionate person, and I think your passion is part of what makes you so successful. I can't help but ask you, because many people ask me to ask you. I was with you that night that LeBron made the announcement.
Who? LeBron. Yeah.
Do you look back and are you proud of your passion? Do you regret anything about that whole?
So are you gonna say, why in the hell did I write that frickin' letter? Is that and I'm gonna be like my kid. I said fricking. I didn't say the word.
You can
anyway. You know what? People in Cleveland, I got letters from handwritten 92-year-old grandmothers, from CEOs, from world-class surgeons at the Cleveland Clinic, from street sweepers, from policemen and firemen, that moment for them was the most, it almost brought everything together. It was much bigger than LeBron and the player. It was like this whole Cleveland thing. I'm not from Cleveland. I've only been doing business there about 8 years, but unless you're from there, and I'm sure there's a handful of you out there from there, you can't understand, somebody said for sure, you can't understand really their passion and their lack of, winning that championship since go back to 1964, the last time. So, that moment of him, one of their own, leaving was just this bigger thing than the rest of the country even realizes. So it played well with, and I wasn't even thinking whether it played well with anybody. Like you said, I just sort of typed, I guess. Now, if I had to do it again, there's definitely a few things in there I would be taking out at this point, especially the wrong things about the future at that time, which is now the past. But in the end, I'm hoping it's a blessing in disguise. We really think we love our team right now. It took 3 years of drafts and high picks to put a group of young guys together that we think this year will be making major strides, and Kyrie Irving and everybody else. So we'll see.
You've been doing this since you were 12. Is that right?
Not mortgages. But
not mortgages. Yeah. That would be impressive if you started a mortgage company at age 12.
Yeah.
What's the thing you're most proud of creating?
I think it's an environment, and it goes back to that culture thing. I think myself and even our management leadership team, we've been together for average of 16 years now, all of us, some more, some less. That we create an environment where people can excel, and that we've removed the typical corporate craziness and bureaucracy that exists in large companies. I think, a lot of people would tell me as we're growing the company over the years, you can't do this stuff. You can't just worry about one customer anymore. You can't take this. You can't be, because you're going to now be on top of a much bigger company. You can't, to this day, if there's a complaint anywhere system-wide in our business, the CEO and myself get the call. We will take every operator is instructed to tell us, we hunt it down, we track, and we're, believe it or not, we get like 3 million calls a month, and there's only 3 or 4 per day of a complaint of a non-return phone call. And everybody knows that we still, sort of track it down. And I think that entrepreneurs, I don't care how big you get, I think you got to be in the bowels of your business. You still have to be close to the client and customer, and really, feeling that day-to-day operation, because as we know in this world, things can change very, very quickly. And, that ivory tower spreadsheet stuff, is not going to work for very long in this world. So,
we're looking at pictures behind us of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
My question for you is, how do you feel when you're walking around Detroit right now? Well,
Detroit, as they depicted on that 60 Minutes thing Sunday night, for those of you who didn't see it, it's a tale of two cities to a degree. So downtown is going through a transformation, and not just because of us, but General Motors and Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Ilitch family that owns the Red Wings and the Tigers and Peter Carmanos, and there's others too. It's going through a transformation like never before, where young people, believe it or not, there's 100% residential occupancy in downtown Detroit and midtown Detroit. You can't find a place to live. There's not enough product. There's not enough places, because there's this massive demand by young people who want to live downtown. Now, the neighborhood's a completely different story. And I'm personally getting involved in the blight removal initiative and task force that we're working with the federal government, the state, and the city, and the foundations. And our goal is to remove every piece of what we call ruin porn. I don't know if you guys ever heard that term, but R-U-I-N.
Heard it from you.
Porn,
right.
Okay. But that wasn't my name. It was a name that came up over the last, and it really becomes like ruin porn, where people come from all over the world to sort of like fawn over the ruins. Okay, so people in Detroit are always rolling the eyes, when people do that. But the best way to make that go away is to remove it and to give people hope in the neighborhoods. You can't solve education, you can't solve crime until you remove these dilapidated homes and commercial buildings, and there's anywhere between 80 and 100,000 of them that have to go. I mean, think about that. It's probably unprecedented in the history of Western civilization, outside of like a natural disaster like Katrina or a war like World War II or something. There's no other precedent for it. But in Detroit, we have to look to the future, and we have to remove the relics of the past to get there. And that's sort of personally what I'm focused on with a bunch of other people there right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just spent a half hour with someone I think is one of the great entrepreneurs in the country. So Dan Gilbert, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Congratulations to you, too.
You're welcome. Thank you. Stay.